Hello everybody, this is Gregory of 5 Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about two parables from Matthew that I think explain well and retort well as to why people get upset when the church doesn't remove evil elements from its institution. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri, Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper et secula seculorum. Amen. Over at the community post for 5 Minute Catholic Apologetics, I posted a picture of my altar. I moved into a new house and I created a home altar. So if you want to take a look at it, it's over there. Now, I've always loved these two parables. Luke is actually the gospel that has the most parables, but Matthew's my favorite. If you're new to the channel, I do have a playlist on a treatment on every book of the New Testament. And I mentioned there that Matthew is my favorite gospel. It doesn't necessarily mean it's like the best written gospel, but for my personal preference, I like Matthew. I think Matthew kind of encapsulates the gospels the best, for my humble opinion, but I just like it the most. Either way, there's two parables in there that I really like, and I think they kind of speak to the idea of why life is unfair. Billy Joel used to have that song, Only the Good Die Young, and there's a lot of guys and girls who think they're righteous, and maybe they are righteous. I have that episode on Parable of the Sower. I think most of us are really in the thorns, being choked by wealth and riches, but we don't really know it. But there are righteous people who look around and they say, this person's evil, this person is cheating on his wife, this person is embezzling, this person backstabs. It's not fair. Why doesn't God do something about it? Yeah. And you can certainly look at something like Matthew 25, the judgment of nations, when he separates the goat from the sheep, and that's based on works. So we have a 4-part series, Undermining Salvation by Faith Alone, and that's one of the things we talk about, how there's works everywhere. Jesus separates the goats from the sheep there. Then you look, the last thing essentially Jesus does in the book of Revelation is saying that we're going to be judged by our works. But either way, so there's this idea like, why doesn't God come in and just get rid of all the bad people right now? And I think there's a couple of parables in Matthew that kind of help. And one of them is the wheat and the tares, or the wheat and the weeds. So we're going to read this right off. So this is Matthew 13, starting at verse 24. Another parable he put forward before them, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seeds in his field. But while men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the householder came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then are there weeds? He said to them, an enemy has done this. The servant said to him, then do you want us to go and gather them? But he said, no, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And at the harvest time I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burnt, but gather the wheat into my barn. And then later on he interprets it over verse 36, essentially saying that the enemy is the devil, right? So we know the devil is the master of lies. He's the king. He's the king of lies and manipulating us. And he will sprinkle bad elements or people that have turned to him amongst us. So we have the wheat and the tares. Tares is a specific type of weed that kind of grows in the Holy Land. So that's why sometimes you hear the wheat and the weeds, or the wheat and the tares. So he talks about that. And also I want to talk about the ones with the fish. So over verse 37, also in Matthew 13. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net which was thrown into the sea and gathered fish of every kind. When it was full, men drew it ashore and sat down and sorted the good into the vessels, but threw away the bad. So it will be at the close of the age. The angels will come out and separate the evil from the righteous and throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So if you're a righteous person, I guess you can take consolation in knowing that there will be judgment, and that no matter what, like I tell my children, there's a great camcorder in the sky that watches all. And of course, we're not even at an age where they understand the word camcorder, so I need to update that. But you see the martyrs talking about in Revelation, where they exclaim to God, like, when will we get justice? When will we be avenged for what's happened to us? And ultimately, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. The goats are going to be separated from the sheep. The good fish are going to be separated from the bad fish. The tares are going to be separated from the weeds, from the wheat. So what do we have to do? Well, first of all, we don't want to be self-righteous. We don't want to be complacent and think, well, I'm in the wheats. I'm a good fish. Look at me, like the Pharisees, right? We have an episode here, Don't Be Pharisaic. Oh, look at me. I'm so right. We persevere to the end. God says it, or Christ says it 3 times. Who goes to heaven? Those who persevere to the end. So we need to persevere to the end until it's our time to die and be in a state of grace and do what we need to do. Because getting into heaven, it's like losing weight. It's like everybody knows how to lose weight. It's just a question of having the self-discipline to do it. Everybody knows kind of like what we need to do to get to heaven. It's just a question of doing it and avoiding the pitfalls that are out there. And look at Romans. I think Romans 7, Paul had a great discussion of how we're just constantly torn between the flesh and the spirit. And then you see in Galatians, he actually talks about the works of the flesh and the fruits of the spirit. So we need to always be progressing. And it's even mentioned in Peter, the epistles of Peter, how we can lose our salvation. What are those who live in a state of righteousness and then fall? It's better than they've never were righteous in the first place. So we always need to be vigilant of that. And we also, concomitant to that, we don't want to be judgmental of others and think, I am saved for sure, you're not. You definitely see this, especially in the Calvinist brand of theology, this my church is saved, everybody in my church is saved, and everyone else is damned to hell. Well, I think that's a slippery slope, because ultimately, and we have episodes here, and we don't know who's really in hell. For example, we don't really know who's in hell. And I think if you're making crass proclamations that you're for sure going to heaven and everyone else is going to hell, I'd be very weary of that, and that is a bankrupt theology. So when it comes to the wheat and the tares and the fish, understand, look, the church, along with every human institution on this planet since time immemorial, has bad people in it. So for you Pollyannas on one side, oh no, the church is impeccable. The people in the church, there's never been a bad priest or bad bishop or bad pope. You're drinking the Kool-Aid, as Jim Jones would say. And then the other side, which I think you see more in the trad side, everybody in the curia is bad. Everybody in the magisterium is bad. It's all corrupt. Apostasy. Look, we've had bad people in the church throughout its whole existence, going back to Judas. And we will continue to have bad people. And I think we need to take consolation that eventually, if you are truly the righteous, and I don't even know if I'm truly the righteous in that group, that eventually justice is served, because God is about justice. He is merciful to those who ask for it, but he's also just. And if you are one of those who like, I can't wait till the bad get their comeuppance, all right, they're going to get their comeuppance. So you just be patient. They're going to get their comeuppance. I think the goal is don't be judgmental. And the other goal is make sure you're not in that group, because we can all falter and end up being in that group. And I think if you have that sin of pride, like, I can't wait, I am perfect. Like you hear the story of the Pharisee and the beggar, right? Like, I'm the Pharisee, I tithe all the time, I donate, and then the other person's like, have mercy on me, I'm a sinner. And Christ says, which of those two is righteous? So you don't want to be like the Pharisees, like, I'm perfect and I'm going in heaven. But also, I suppose, take consolation in the fact that the bad people, the unrepentant, those who've turned their back on God, will get their comeuppance if they don't change their ways. But we do want them to change their ways. Think of the parable of the prodigal son. Think of the parable of the lost sheep. There's more rejoicing in heaven for one soul that comes back, and that's what we want. Think of the parable of the workers being paid at different times of the day, right? We don't want to be those dudes, well, we worked the whole day and they only worked for an hour. We should all rejoice when the unrighteous turn their ways and become righteous. But either way, take consolation in these two parables found in Matthew 13. Guys, post in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Hit the notification, subscribe, and share with others. Until next time, take care, God bless, and pray.